If you had asked me that question before the game, I would have said, no, I won't be surprised if they lose to France. If you asked me that question with 3.5 minutes left when they were up by 7, I would have said, yes, I can't imagine them losing this game because, as it turned out, I couldn't imagine that Damian Lillard would commit 2 turnovers. I couldn't imagine that Kevin Durant would miss 2 wide open threes. I couldn't imagine that Bam Adebayo would miss a putback and 2 free throws, all of which happened down the stretch. It was a comedy or tragedy of error. So the fact of the matter is, going in, I would have said no, because this is the same France team, or at least the same core, that beat us in the quarterfinals in 2019. This is a different Team USA, but that's part of the problem. We're starting from scratch. The only 2 players that are carryover from 2019 are Jason Tatum and Chris Middleton. And Jason Tatum actually didn't play in that 2019 team. So there's no continuity. Meanwhile, we played against a French team that had its core intact from that success back in 2019. But so there's 2 ways to go here. One, that not surprised that they would lose. But because of the position that they put themselves in spite of this loss, I'm not looking at it as a referendum on what Team USA ultimately might be able to do. But for them to melt down up 7 with 3.5 minutes left, to get 3 3-pointers that would have given them a lead with under a minute left, with this team and its array of shooters, that part I'm surprised by, for sure.
I think our leaning into super teams and appreciation of stars in the NBA sometimes makes us talk about the sport like it's not a team sport. And it is. And all these guys are used to playing different ways. And to your point, this French team had a core that was coming back from 2019. Only KD and Draymond have played in the Olympics before. Everyone else in this squad, this is their first Olympics. So we might have all the talent, but we're not a team. I don't buy into the idea that any of these guys care less than any of the other countries about winning a medal. Why would they be there? This is a COVID year. It's a very strenuous trip. This is not like a normal Olympics where you're getting the full Olympic experience. So I believe that all these men care very much about continuing on the Team USA legacy and winning a gold medal. But we're starting from scratch every single time. Popovich isn't known for being the most flexible of coaches, and this whole entire situation might just call for a couple audibles. They really need to figure this thing out. There's no continuity. We talked all year about the Brooklyn Nets and how great they would be, but our biggest question was what? They don't have any continuity. It does matter. You have a bunch of stars collectively together. It takes a little time to get things going. Middleton, Holiday, and Booker didn't even get there until Saturday night. So there's a lot of reason to be concerned. Now, I don't think that we should panic. Iran is on Wednesday, and you have Czech Republic on Saturday. Win the next 2 games, and we'll be in a good spot moving forward. But what I don't like hearing is Popovich just saying, like, we shouldn't be surprised. We need to have some standards, and that's very strange coming from Popovich. It's almost like the excuse machine is kind of cranked up here. Like, there are reasons why Team USA is struggling, but don't just, shove it aside. Like, oh, like, why are we surprised? Other teams are great. Other countries are great. Like, no. You have something that you need to figure out here. The players, there's reports that they're unhappy because there's concepts and not plays. They just need to all sit down and figure out what adjustments they need to make moving forward that's going to elevate everyone and get everyone to play together, which seems to be the issue.
Yes, I am truly surprised, shocked even. This should be embarrassing. They should be embarrassed that they are the ones that broke the streak that dates all the way back to 2004. That is a very, very long time of greatness, dominance, and prominence as a team and as a group. The one team that you can always bank on, that you can always count on, that's going to bring a gold medal back, and that still could be true, still could remain true, is the basketball team ever since they made it a deal where pros could play in the Olympics. We all remember that. They brought the Dream Team together. That was the birth of the Dream Team. This group here, this is what is shocking and surprising to me, more so than them losing this game. And it goes to your point, Joy, is that they need to figure this out. Even on that Dream Team, every single time they were on the court, you knew who the guy was. Okay? If it was MJ that was out there, And in dream team terms, that could be Michael Jordan or it could be Magic Johnson. Whenever there needed to be a guy, those teams had a guy. Even with Vince Carter and Kevin Garnett and all of those teams, there was always a guy. You had to have your facilitators. You had to have your guy, okay? I did not see that with this team in particular. It just seemed like the greatest collection of players that we have assembled, and they were out there trying to figure out their way through this game. I don't think that was the most strategically sound approach to going into the Olympics, especially with all of the things that have been mentioned, the conditions of not having a whole lot of time, having a short offseason, everything that we're discussing. Some of the guys went back because of COVID, health issues. But here and still, you're telling me one of the greatest coaches of all time, and Gregg Popovich, can't put together a simple enough game plan for this collection of guys and say, you're the facilitator, you're the scorer, you're the rebounder, you're the defensive guy. Play your role or go home. We'll get somebody else in here that can do it. Rick, I just feel as though that has to be considered the miss or the most surprising thing that I observed. Just as a layman, just as an onlooker, I think that was the most surprising part of all of this.
So you both make great points, but here's the thing, and this is the problem that I have with bagging on Gregg Popovich as the reason why they weren't successful, or that they've had a 6-3 record under him and they'd only lost one under Mike Krzyzewski, is that he is trying to utilize the exact same game plan that Coach K used, which is our offense is going to be generated by our defense. We are going to smother teams defensively. We're going to turn them over, and that's going to get us playing fast. And we don't have to worry about executing in the half court because we haven't had enough time to practice together to develop a half court system. So we're just going to try to get out and run and fast break on teams. The problem is they weren't able to do that. And when I look at the composition of this roster compared to the last 3 Olympic teams, all of those teams had defensive guys who could lead the way. Kobe, LeBron, Jimmy Butler, Klay Thompson, Kyle Lowry. They all had multiple defenders. You're right, Joy, in that it's not a matter that they don't care, but I believe that this team didn't know going into the game against France how hard they were going to have to play that style, and that it wasn't about we'll just outshoot them. It was we're going to have to bring it defensively. And they certainly didn't do that. Now, the other element that's exposed here is the fact that we as Americans, we don't have any U.S.-born quality big men anymore. Look at the NBA and who the best big men are. They're all foreign players. And what France did is just turn back the clock. They were playing 2 7-footers on the floor the entire second half. We're trying to guard them with Draymond Green, Bam Adebayo, and Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant ended up fouling out in attempting to guard Rudy Gobert, as you might expect. So it's just a matter of the reason that I'm not surprised is because of the disparity and the fact that things have changed, and the way we put our teams together is not the way international teams are put together. The reason I was surprised is that I've seen us figure this out before in spite of all that and get the job done. And we were right on the precipice of doing exactly that one more time, and then we kicked it to the curb.
Yeah, we were right there until we weren't. And that's the point. So I still put it at Popovich's feet if what you're saying is true, that's how Coach K would approach it, because you have to know your personnel. Now, obviously, a lot of the personnel changed very quickly, but we do have, some tape on these guys. We know what kind of players they are. We know we're a smaller team, but we also know we have some shooters. So we can adjust to that. We're not going to out-bully France. We're not going to out-muscle France. So then we got to play faster, and we got to put it into Kevin Durant's hands and Dame's hands and Booker's hands and Holiday's hands, Middleton. Get those guys going. Now, Booker, Holiday, and Middleton just finished a pretty rough series, so maybe lean on the other guys there. But if If the concept is we're going to outbully a team that is clearly not only bigger than us, but they are more rested than our bigger players, they are healthier, they've been together, then you have to make an adjustment.
But Joy, to your
and
point,
that's on Popovich.
To your point, the experience of international competition with this particular roster is not there.
No,
we've only had two guys who've played in the Olympics.
KD and Draymond, that's it.
And the rules are different, and the way the game's officiated is different. So we have a lot of guys who just aren't familiar with what you can do to get away with playing against bigger players. And all of that is to me, is a function. I agree with you. I loved your first statement about we should be building a team rather than a collection of all-stars. Like, I think there are players that aren't necessarily stars or all-stars that would help this team because they would do the dirty work, because they would be willing to play defense and focus on that alone. It's why Keldon Johnson is on this roster, essentially. So there is that aspect of it that we can't ignore. But the other part is we're constantly recreating this team, and that has put us behind the eight ball.
They may not be the most well-versed in playing international basketball, but you know what they are well-versed in? Isolation basketball. All these guys, most of them, are at their best when isolating players. How do you not figure out a way to isolate them? I thought it was a little damning to say that they couldn't get out on the fast breaks and be able to do things that they're normally able to do in this game that they played against France. I think that's damning because you're talking about the greatest collection in the world of players that can play isolated basketball. And to me, if you can't find a way to clear up the court for KD to do what he needs to do, create space if you're Dame Lillard to do what you need to do. I just don't buy that. I don't like that at all. And quite frankly, I don't think I'm bagging. I don't think we're bagging on Gregg Popovich. I think we're saying that if you have guys that have superpowers, then you have them use their superpowers, not other things, Joy. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, the problem is that you have all these guys who have superpowers, individual superpowers. And in the international game, having someone play one-on-one doesn't work because they don't have defensive 3 seconds. And they're playing with much bigger guys. France did, and a number of these teams will. The guys are not used to seeing. We're not used to seeing that in the NBA. So the ability to ISO a guy and have him attack like you can in the NBA is really not an option when it comes to international basketball. And that is the crux that Gregg Popovich is facing. Roster may not be good enough to play the way that it worked for Coach K, and we don't have enough collective experience together to play in a half-court set and play slower with bigger players and win that way. So it's really
in trouble.
It's not an easy place. It's not an easy place to be. And we've always figured it out. But to his point, to Pop's point, it hasn't always been easy. I mean, we've had plenty over in winning the last 3 golds. There have always been a couple of games that could have gone either way. We just ultimately ended up on the right side.
And hopefully we still will. We have Iran on Wednesday and Czech Republic on Saturday, so they can get back on track. It's just up to them.